If yours is like most nonprofit organizations, volunteers are among your most important assets. What are you doing to involve and nurture your volunteers? Here's how it works at San Benito.
Volunteering was one of the best things that I ever done. What make me feel, they make you feel very important. Even though you don't have this much education, maybe they make you they welcome you with open arms.
When I first came on, I came on as a volunteer, but I just didn't come on, but I treated it as a job. I didn't treat it as, well, oh, well, I don't have to go in today because I'm not getting paid for it. It's treating it like it's a job, like you're getting paid for it.
We couldn't exist without volunteers. Most of us are volunteers. Now, there was one grant that we got that spoiled us a little bit in a way because we were getting the tutors were getting paid a small amount from being tutors. But for the most part, we have been volunteers on a non-paid basis.
We have different types of volunteers. We have some volunteers that come in and answer the phones. We have some that teach. We have some that come in and will just read to the students. We have the people that are on probation that come in and they do everything from landscaping to cleaning, janitorial. We do have some that are accountants and can teach the math. It depends on their expertise.
Volunteers are free as far as their need of financial support from the center, but volunteers are costly because we need to, first of all, give them plenty of workshops, plenty of resource material, plenty of information about everything that is new and comes up in a resource.
To make sure that they add up. I know how many students that I have that need certain needs, and by talking to the volunteers, then I will find out if I'll be able to use them or not. If not, I'll tell them, well, maybe I can use it in the office or place them somewhere else.
We have had a couple of cases where tutors just didn't work out. We had one gentleman who had been with the State Department and had been all over South America, and he was very interested in being a volunteer and coming in and so on. And he seemed to think that they all ought to, the students ought to appreciate him more and to be learning faster. And he was really pushing them, and they weren't learning fast enough to suit him. He lasted about a month.
First, I assess a student to see what level they're at when they come in, and then I place them with a tutor. And every month we evaluate the student, and if they're progressing, so we know that the tutor is doing what they're supposed to be doing. If not, I go back and say, well, this student needs a little bit more vocabulary or more spelling or whatever it is that they're doing. The volunteers, they come in, they email us and let us know, or they call us and say, okay, I'll be available on these days. And so I'll do a schedule for whatever student is coming and needs certain skills taught. I come in the morning, check my email, and email them back, and by the time I know it, we'll set up something.
If I have a paid staff person that I know is in charge and paying attention to the needs that are there, we're going to have that covered. And the volunteer, it can come and go, and they usually do. So they don't have a total dedication. I'm not saying they're not dedicated. I'm saying they don't have a total dedication to what they're doing compared to the staff who is paid.
Morning.
Morning.
By the time one volunteer steps out, there needs to be 2 or 3 more training and ready to go in. And you're thinking, where do these people come from?
Volunteermatch.org, through board members, through our local newspapers, our TV station, through the school. There's a certain channel that has where we do announcements, public announcements.
Myself, even if I'm at a grocery store, I'll engage in a conversation with just about anybody that will talk to me. And the first thing I'll ask is, are you going to school, or do you work? Do you have some time off? Would you like to volunteer? And that's how we get those people to come to the center.
We represent the Literacy Center, so whenever anybody sees me, I'm at my best behavior. And I talk about the Literacy Center. And so, you know, I invite them over.
This is an opportunity for them to give something back for their community and do it at a level where they can get together with other like-minded people and make something successful.
At San Benito and elsewhere, volunteers can be a critical resource for your center. Kathleen McCleskey has been working for over 25 years in the field, gathering, training, and helping organizations strengthen their volunteer participation. Welcome, Kathleen.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, you know, I started off as a volunteer coordinator way back those 25 years ago. So I feel like I've been doing it a great portion of my life.
Well, now, as a volunteer coordinator,
Yeah.
I'm sure that, well, the great thing why everybody loves volunteers, of course, is that they're free.
No, well, and see, that's one of the biggest misperceptions. Volunteers aren't free. Yeah, there's not a salary line on the budget for them, but it does take time, it does take training, it takes space. One place I went to, I had to beg for a place to hang my coat, you know, type of thing. So it takes some...
As a volunteer.
As a volunteer. So it does logistically, you have to think about, so what resources do we need to give the volunteers to make them successful? So, yeah, there's no bottom line paycheck for it, but no, they're not free. It takes time and just basically logistical support to help them do, you know, what volunteers are supposed to do.
Now, although and there's there's actually a volunteer salary you think needs to be paid, right?
Well, that really, ideally, in the ideal world, there should be an individual at each nonprofit that is a paid person who can do the job of managing the volunteers. Otherwise, it needs to be at least a person that's dedicated to say, okay, I am the person that's going to help recruit, manage, recognize, do all those things that need to happen for a well-managed volunteer program. And ideally, it's a paid person, and it's a person that's their sole duty. For some places, it may be staff does it across the board, but in an ideal world, it's somebody that gets a paycheck. That is their full-time job.
So I suppose one of the challenges is who to take. I mean, how do you pick your volunteers? I mean, you know, how do you screen them? Do you just have to take anyone, whoever comes?
No, oh, no. That's the worst thing you can do is say, well, just take anybody that walks in the door. You know, you really do need to screen them, because what has happened up front is you've identified very specific things you'd like your volunteers to do. And so if you just
this is part of your strategic plan?
Exactly, yeah, because
okay.
if you're looking at your strategic plan, you say, okay, we would like to accomplish this in our organization. One of the things you have to ask is, how can the volunteers augment or help you make that mission? How is it that they can really do a good job and help you out doing there? So what you want to do is not just bring in anybody off the street, but you want to very targetedly look at people and say, these are the skills I need. These are the people I need to come in here. And that goes everywhere from volunteers who are going to be direct service, to folks who are going to be advocacy, to folks who are going to sit on your board. It's just not bring them in and we'll do something with them. That's the old snag, bag, and tag routine. You know, you don't...
What?
Snag, bag, and tag. That's, I'm going to snag you in here, and I'm going to put a tag on you. You are now a volunteer, and stick you someplace. You know, you have to really think about it, and you have to be very conscious of what you would like those volunteers to do.
So I suppose this is the argument for making sure that whoever is doing the volunteer coordination is way in on the strategic plan.
Exactly, because they have to be very in on what trends are impacting bringing volunteers into an agency. Because right now, time is the biggest thing. I mean, you and I both know how much time is there to do stuff. It's like, I got tons of stuff to do. So the individual that would be managing the volunteers realize, I really can't expect a volunteer to come in here and volunteer 40 hours a week. The national average is only 52 hours a year. So if you're thinking about
Maybe
that,
for any volunteers?
period. Yeah, that's an independent sector has come up with that number. That does 1 hour a week. So you can't sit back and expect, I need somebody in here 40 hours a week. You've got to think about, what is it I can get volunteers to do that's about 1 hour a week? That's all the time people have. So that manager of the volunteer program has to really know those types of trends, and time is one of those. The other one's family. Volunteers now, really, when you talk about time, if I want to spend time, what do I want to do? I want to spend it more with my family. So a really well strategically thinking nonprofit will sit back and say, how can I involve volunteers, but how can I involve the whole family? And then that brings people in and say, you know what, I don't mind doing this because my whole family's a part of it. So it's really strategically thinking about it.
So I would think that family involvement could be immensely effective because you can recruit 4 workers, 5 workers
Exactly,
at once,
yeah.
and make them all happier.
Well, that's true, and it may be like at San Benito. I know they've got a yard and everything there. Maybe some of them could work in the yard. Some of them could help with administrative stuff. Some could be tutors. The idea about this is, what can you do to involve the whole family? Because I don't mind coming in and giving you 1 hour a week if my whole family can come. Or maybe, gee, I'll even give you 3 or 4 because my whole family can come. And it's just a trend that's coming, really, really coming fast and furious in the nonprofit world.
So is this, you talk about this business about trends, so do you, I mean, having done this for a whole lot of years, have you seen trends come and go in volunteer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a long time ago, we used to call it Polly Do-Gooder. It was a person that did 30, 40 hours a week worth of volunteering. And I have to raise my hand and say, I used to do that. But that was 20 years ago. People just don't have that time anymore. And that person used to be the lady of the house that, could do 52 things at once. And plus, I volunteered 15 hours a week at, X place. They don't exist anymore.
Well, now, if I have an organization and I'd like to, and I'm assigned for volunteer coordination, how do I keep up on the trends in volunteering?
Oh, well, there's a lot of websites and everything out there.
The web.
Yeah. One of the best ones is, it's called Faith Popcorn, and it's literally Faith Popcorn. You can go out there and look up her website, and she tells you things like this: time poverty.
Faith Popcorn is a person?
It's a person. It's a website, www.faithpopcorn. It's really a good site.
.org?
I don't know if it's .org or .com, but it's out
Okay,
there.
Faith Popcorn.
Yeah. But the other one is independent sector. Really, if you're looking at working with nonprofits and working in the volunteer sector, independent sector is a really great one to go to also, because it tells you the trends, like the 1 hour a week. 52 hours a year. You can get those off the websites and everything.
Now, we love our volunteers, but our volunteers can cause us trouble in terms of liability. How do we think about screening? Do you have to get a private detective to check the background?
No. Well, and I think really, again, if you're strategically looking at this, anytime you write a volunteer task description, you have to ask yourself, you really have to play the devil's advocate. What is the worst thing that could happen? And then you try and think about, what are the risks here? For example, and I always think about Habitat for Humanities, think about the risk. You sit there and go, you've got hammers and saws and everything. Well, what Habitat does is it trains people about, these are the risks. So you really look at those risk managements and you train the volunteers, these are the risks you're looking at. These are the things we don't want you to do. My favorite story is one where you're, if you get a bunch of folks cleaning up along the highways, especially here in Texas when it gets hot in the summer, one of the things you tell them is, don't pick up the tin cans. And you're sitting there, but wait a minute, I'm supposed to be cleaning up along the highway. No, you kick the tin can first, because creepy crawlers could be in the tin can. That's risk management. What could go wrong? So, and then a lot of folks say, oh, but volunteers can't hold confidentiality. Yeah, they can, just as well as your paid staff. But it means you train the volunteers so that they know, this is confidential. These are the risks you may face. So it's really that whole piece of training and making sure people are prepared for the volunteer position they're taking.
So I suppose, though your volunteers are not getting money, they are getting something. And that varies, right, what they want?
It does, yeah. Some folks literally go into it to see, gee, do I like doing this? And it's much better to do it, and as a volunteer, and come back and say, you know what? I don't want to work with children, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. So a lot of times you'll find college students doing that. They'll kind of stick their toes in it and say, well, do I like it or do I not? Some folks are in transition in careers, and that's a good thing to do. Well, gee, do I really want to go do this or not? And so it's a good transition for a career. A lot of people do it because they truly believe in the cause. I know there's one nonprofit I've been working with, and the reason I'm volunteering for those folks because I know what they're doing helps the clientele that they're serving. So it really is, it is an internal thing. I believe in what these folks are doing. So it is, you know, it can be other things, but a lot of times it's that inside. This is what I really believe in. I want to give to this group, this nonprofit.
Now, a lot of organizations have like kind of big thank you things, and they really go through a lot of trouble and expense sometimes to thank and reward their volunteers.
Well, you know what, speaking of trends, one of the trends going on is a lot of nonprofits are coming back and saying, don't spend that money on me. It's nice that I get the chicken dinner and all that kind of stuff, but I'd rather you give that money back to the clients. Give me a double pump handshake. Tell me thank you. Keep it simple when it comes to the recognition piece, but spend that money on the clients we serve. Don't give me the chicken or whatever it is. I'd rather you spend that money on the nonprofit. So that's another trend that's coming off.
So I suppose that you talk about the 52 hours a week is what a year is what you're going to get. 52 hours a week would be really great. That would be great. But 52 hours a year. So I suppose any organization must needs spend a bunch of time thinking about the time of those volunteers and how to, at an hour a week, you better really.
Oh yeah, because you know, if volunteers go in and they're sitting there kind of twiddling their thumbs and don't have anything to do, they'll walk. I mean, they have nothing to keep them there. And that's the reason statistically it says you've got to be well prepared so you can manage those volunteers so that they'll stay. And if all they can give is 1 hour a week, that's great. If maybe they can give 3 hours a week, boy, that's even better. So you really have to think about what is it these folks are going to be doing. And I've got to be well, I guess, well informed about what it is they want to give, as well as what is it we need for them to do in our organization. Because you want to get them in there and get them out, because time poverty, remember, is one of the things that folks say, I don't have a lot of time, so you better not waste it.
Well, so now sometimes it's pretty easy, right? Because if a guy volunteers who's an accountant, well, you know, all right then, go and do our books.
No. Because let's
oh,
face it.
slap me around,
Kathleen,
that's
I know,
fine.
yeah. But it would be like saying, hey, do you want to come in and volunteer and be our own air host for, you know, for our organization? You go, you know, wait a minute, time out. I do that all the time. Let me do something different. Be the same thing with an accountant. It's basically, you know what, I crunch numbers all day long. Please don't make me do your books. I'd rather sit and read to a child, or I'd rather sit and do this, or, you know, something different. Now, sometimes you'll get folks, they'll say, yeah, I don't mind giving that back. That's my skill. I don't mind doing it for you. But you better ask. You better not assume that we'll put them there just because they have this skill. They may be, you know, burned out on that skill because that's their full-time job.
So now, you need, I guess, one thing you need to do is really understand who your volunteers are. Now, is that best achieved by a questionnaire? Or is that best achieved by an interview, or does it vary? Or give us some advice about it.
It really varies. In fact, more and more organizations are going to online virtual interviews so that people can go in and download the basic name, address, all that kind of stuff off of a website, and then of course click, and it's right there. I mean, the individual who's managing the volunteers has that there, and they can ship it back really quick saying, yes, hi, come in and talk to me at this time on this date. So you really professionally look at, how can I do this professionally so I'm not wasting people's time?
Wait, now I'm an organization now. What am I going to do? Do I have to like now learn how to program websites?
No, because it's really easy to do, basically, because
for you it's easy.
Well, yeah, okay.
But,
Yeah.
do I have to do that?
No, because it can be in a very easily downloadable Word document or something like that that they can ship back and forth.
But you're saying though, I have to learn how to make a Word form, and then I know how to post it so that people can download it, right? I got to do that?
But see, another trend is people want you to be responsive. And if it's, well, come in next Thursday versus, hey, click here, push the button, and I've got your interview information right here, people are going to go for the time. Don't waste my time. Let's do it virtually real quick. And the other thing, too, ideally you do have to come in. At some point, you have to come in and talk to this person face to face. Although there are some programs that are totally virtual and you never ever see the person. So it depends on what you're wanting to have. For example, a newsletter. Why do you ever have to see the person that's doing your newsletter? You really don't. They can do it virtually and ship it to you. But you still need to fill out a form and talk to them some and everything.
But now, if somebody's volunteered to do my newsletter, isn't it useful, or how useful is it? How useful is FaceTime for volunteers? If they say they don't need it, I'll do it at home. can you trust that, all right, they'll just keep cranking it out even more?
Oh, no, because some volunteers volunteer for that very simple thing of they get motivated by being around other people. So you really have to know motivational factors of volunteers. So if some of them are motivated by the fact, hey, I'm going to be with a group of people, we're going to have fun, we're going to do this. Some are motivated by, oh, okay, I'm going to sit on a board, and I'm really going to, this is really cool, I'm sitting on a board, and I've got some visibility here, and I'm really helping folks out. So it's different motivations for different folks. Some folks don't want to be bothered, and they'll do the newsletter because they don't want to have to come in and go to meetings, or do that, or do this. They're just very happy doing it, you know, in their pajamas in their room. It's really much easier for them. So it's different strokes for different folks with this.
But that sounds like a very kind of time-intensive thing to figure out who this one, I mean, I'm trying to manage 10 volunteers, 5 volunteers. I got to think about this one wants to be with, wants warm fuzzies, and this one just wants to sit at home, and this.
You ask the questions. You can set up your interview forms to do that. The interview form I used to have, I would set every task down that every volunteer, that I would like a volunteer to do. I'd set the task down in a form, and then I'd have a checklist. Do you want to give this skill? Do you want to learn this skill, or don't ask me to do this? And if they said, don't ask me to do this, then of course I wouldn't ask them. But I could tell by what they checked, yes, I'd like to do this, or yes, I'd like to do that. Then I knew I could say, hey, we've got this, would you like to do this? And it matched. So it's not, it doesn't have to be that intensive.
So my guess is that a satisfied, fulfilled volunteer will not only keep volunteering, but just might recruit some more volunteers.
Yeah, in fact, they're probably your best recruiter. One-on-one, you know, is, hey, I had a great time, come do it with me. And that's another one, again, one of the trends that are going on is that friends are bringing friends in if they've had a good experience. Of course, if they haven't, they're going to say, don't go there, they don't manage your time well. You know, I sat around for an hour before they gave me anything to do, but if they're managed well, it really brings folks in. So, yeah, best recruitment tool, get out there, it's one-on-one. Somebody being good at doing it, happy doing it, and they say, hey, come on, friend, go do it with me.
So how much time, given that it's really important that they have a good experience and all of that, how much time do I need to spend, and how do I assess the joy, the happiness, the satisfaction of my volunteers?
You know, that's going to come in a lot of different ways, because really what you're looking at is what's the outcome of what they've done. And if you strategically looked at it, some of your outcomes are basically going to be, hey, I had a good time, it was great. Some of them, and let's take a literacy program, for example. Some of them you're going to be able to say, okay, I have got this volunteer working with 3 folks, and they're supposed to be coming in at this grade level. When you finish working with them, it's really easy to measure the outcomes. You give them a pre-test, you give them a post-test, and that's very measurable. The volunteer made this difference because their 3 folks that they were tutoring came up this much in their reading level or whatever. But some folks, it's just the thanks for coming, you made a difference, and that's great, and the smiley face is good. The smile, you can tell by the smiley face that they have that it's a good thing that they did.
Right, I want to go back. I want to see if I mean, this is all real good, but I want to see if I can kind of just get it organized in my own tiny little mind. Now, first and foremost, I've been designated in my group as the volunteer guy. I've got hired to do that or whatever. So now I'm sitting in the strategic planning meeting, and all the focus are there. Now, what is my goal here? I'm the volunteer guy. What am I trying to figure out?
Oh, well, when you're sitting down, you're talking about the strategic plan.
Right.
If they say, here's a goal, you can say, I can do that. I can help you by getting you more people to do that. So really, you're saying, this is how my program, as the coordinator of volunteers, I can help recruit volunteers to help you reach that goal.
But okay, you need people to do lots of things. How do we think about what stuff the people for free do and what stuff the people we pay do? Is it just a question of, do we have money?
No, because really, ideally what has happened, once you identify this goal, and usually it's, okay, staff person, this is your job to execute this particular goal. And then the staff person, you go to them and say, hey, what would you do if I could give you somebody to help you do that? Well, a lot of people are going to turn down help. And what will happen is that the volunteer coordinator goes in and says, I can give you somebody that'll help you with that goal. And they go, oh, you can? You say, yeah, I can get you somebody. Let's write a task description. So that's where the buy-in with the staff person comes in, because they're helping write the task description for that volunteer.
But now, should I have already identified a pool of volunteers whose skills I know that I can present? Or do I say, well, you need somebody, I'll find someone, by God?
No. This is where you go back to really looking at, okay, what skill is it that I really need here? And then you do a very targeted recruitment campaign. For example, well, let's take Little League Baseball, for example, okay? You could put an ad out there to recruit a Little League coach and say, we've got the bats, we've got the balls, we've got the field, we need you to coach. So it's really targeting what you need in the community. That's what I'm going to go out and ask for. So you can't, well, yeah, you can do a shotgun blast. Hey, everybody in the world come in and volunteer for me. But let's face it, in most towns, you don't have just one nonprofit wanting volunteers. You've got tons of them. So if you're just saying, I need volunteers, you know, so does everybody else. So you have to really be targeted at what you're asking for. And again, this is what we need. I need you.
Well, that's fine. Well, you just made a fine point. Yeah, everybody wants volunteers, and everybody wants that fine accountant. Everybody wants that great. So why should they come volunteer for my organization rather than Pam's organization or Ira's organization?
Well, because what has happened is that you've already got a reputation that you manage your volunteers well. You've got a reputation that, hey, you come in here and we'll use your time well. You won't be twiddling your thumbs someplace. So it's really building that reputation. And a lot of times it really helps too. Well, I got to tell you this story. There was a friend of mine that went out to a bowling alley. It was kind of like halftime at a bowling alley thing. And she got out there with her shoes on. She stood in the middle of the bowling alley and said, we need 15 people on Saturday to do this. She got her 15 people. But it was a one-shot deal. So sometimes you have to really look at it. There's not 52 million volunteers running out there, but maybe you only need some for a one-shot deal. Maybe, you know, if she'd have needed him, she'd said, you know what, we need somebody for 3 months to help us tutor, you know, 15 people that we have. So you really target it to people and to what you need. And the word gets around, hey, this organization uses volunteers well. And once the word gets out, believe me, people will say, okay, I'll give you a try.
Well, I would also assume that people who have benefited from your organization form a pretty decent pool. Is that true?
It's true, it's true. In fact, volunteers give monetarily much higher percentage of money than non-volunteers do. An organization, again, that I work for here in town, one of their volunteers just gave them $10,000 because they believed in the organization. They didn't solicit, they didn't have to ask. They said, I believe in what you're doing, here's the check. And it's a national statistic again. Volunteers give more for the organizations they volunteer with than they do for, hey, would you come and give us, you know, this much money?
So when you're looking for volunteers, like your case files are maybe one of the best places to go looking for.
Exactly, yeah. I always tell folks, keep a record of every board member you've ever had, every volunteer you've ever had, anybody that's ever given donations to you. And it's okay to go back and say, hey, you know, you volunteered for us a couple of years ago. We've got this new project going. Would you like to come back again? So I tell folks, don't ever write anybody off because, you know, you may have a new segment of their project going on that they'll go, whoa, yeah, that's something different. I'd like to do that.
How important is it to maintain relations with folks who no longer volunteer, who volunteered for a season and then stop? Do they come back? Do they get burned and then come back, or?
Yeah, sometimes they do. Yeah, and a lot of times you have them in cycles, especially like during the school year and things like that. You'll have a lot of students come in from universities and high schools and things like that. They'll come in for a while and volunteer, and then of course you won't see them during the summertime. Right. But if they've really, really bought into what you're doing, they'll come back. They'll come back. So that's the good news. And oh, the other example is a lot of times organizations now use community service volunteers, and once their time of community service is over.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what a community service. You mean like someone who got tickets and was
yeah,
sentenced to
exactly.
communities?
Yeah.
Okay,
the judge says you got to give back 30 hours or whatever
okay.
it is. But what's interesting, if those folks had a good experience, they come back after that 30 hours and keep volunteering. So again, well managed, and they'll keep coming.
Now, when one is looking within an organization, so you have an organization and you're looking for someone to do this, are there criteria that you should be looking for? Are there qualities that one should look for who makes a good volunteer coordinator?
Yes, and in fact, there's criteria that you can look through, and part of them is knowing how to strategically place volunteers, how to recruit volunteers, how to look at money, how to look at everything from recruitment techniques to interviewing techniques, all those things. There are very definite criteria that you can look at. In fact, the Association of Volunteer Administration has set up those particular criteria. And you can become credentialed in the area of managing volunteers.
Well, of course, now, you know, once you get a volunteer, they're always just great, and they always do their jobs perfectly well, and it's never a need to kind of get rid of any of them because they're all...
No.
What? No,
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, well, no, but the thing about it is I think a lot of folks say, well, they're here for free, so
That's
we
right.
can't fire them.
That's right.
No, you can. And I think that's where a lot of times folks really get into trouble because there's a volunteer that may not be doing what you expect them to do. Yes, you can get rid of them, but you've got to have set things up first. They need a task description. They really need some performance expectations. It's like anybody that does their job, they want to know what success looks like. Well, so does a volunteer. So when you sit down with them, you say, I'd like, you know, here's your task description. Here are my expectations of you. And what you do with those expectations, you also help the paid staff person knows those expectations also. Because if you've got 15 or 20 volunteers, or like in hospitals, 100, 150 volunteers, one person can't keep up with it. So the staff member may need to keep up with those volunteers. So what happens is here are the expectations. And you've promised that you'll be in here at 3 o'clock on Thursday, and it gets to be 3:30, it gets to be 4, you don't show up at all.
I'm working for free. I'm volunteering.
I'm sorry, it took me a lot of time to recruit you. If you can't be here, is there something else you'd like to do? Is there something else we can do that will help fit your time better? And the key about it is you may be able to kind of redirect them within your agency, but sometimes it's like, you know, you're not doing this, you're not upholding confidentiality, you're not here on time. I'm sorry, but we can't use your services anymore. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do.
It sounds like you're treating volunteers as if they were staff.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you know, I mean, you don't want your staff to be late. You don't want your volunteers to be late.
And there's work that needs to get done.
There's work that needs to get done, and your clients are waiting for this volunteer to come in to help them do whatever it is they're going to do. You also, and a lot of people go, ooh, this is uncomfortable, but you need policies and procedures for your volunteers, just like you have policies and procedures for your paid staff, just like you have policies and procedures for your board. You need to set people up for success, and that's one of the things that, again, looking at it from a strategic point of view, what am I asking these folks to do? What are their expectations? Here are your policies and procedures. Here are confidentiality statements. I used to have my folks sign a confidentiality statement annually, because that's basically coming in and saying, you still want to volunteer here for the next year? Oh, yeah, I do. Well, then you take the pledge. I uphold confidentiality for the next 365 days.
So now, what do we owe, or what does an organization owe its volunteers?
Oh, wow. I think
Respect for their time.
Well, respect for their time's one. Always say thank you. Always say thank you. The good news is most of the statistics say organizations do that really well, say thank you in some shape, form, or fashion. But you also, again, well managed, use their time well, tell them thank you, make sure they know where to hang their coat, park their car, you know, all kinds of things like that. Just help them be as successful as possible.
And to the organizations, the volunteers owe
their allegiance, you know, really, kind of, if you want to look at it that way. But, you know, if I'm going to come in here and you expect me to do something, what I really want is that I want to do the best job I can